This message is recorded and directed exclusively for a worldwide audience, but moreover is directed directly to Miss Joan Rivers. You know, Joan, you have a big mouth, and it seems that there are times when you don't know when to shut it. There are some things, Joan, that you don't say. You know, throughout your career and throughout your life, you've been one of these people who think that because of your money and your social position, your influence, and because of the fact that you're a comedian, that you can say and do anything you want to do. And you don't sometimes realize the damage that you do. And every time you do it, Joan, you hide behind, I'm a comedian, I'm a comedian. You know? Bullshit. And you know it. You're full of shit. You know what you said about these girls out in Ohio that were held for a fucking decade in a pervert's basement, Joan, was uncalled for. Completely uncalled for. Their attorney was right for pressing you for an apology. You know, you get up on the stage and you get in the public light and you put on this act, and then when you say something or do something that you know was bad, when I say bad, I mean you know you made a bad judgment. You know, Joan, I know, and you know, and the public knows what kind of person you really are. That you stooped so low as to compare a life of freedom and luxury, living with your daughter, to being kidnapped forcibly. Forcibly, Joan, that's the difference between you and these girls. These girls were forced into their situation. You weren't forced into living with your daughter, and everybody knows it. You're doing it for a reality show, or for whatever other attention you can get out here. If we know anything about you, Joan, it's that you're an attention seeker, and that you've only ever cared about two things, yourself and your goddamn money. Joan, you've got no heart. You know, you're just like the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion. Because you have no heart, you're absolutely fucking brainless, and you've got no goddamn courage. Especially when you attack 3 innocent women who were kidnapped forcibly and held forcibly for a decade. Who the hell do you think you are? You know, Joan, I'm a survivor of a kidnapping, a parental kidnapping. And just because it wasn't a stranger like what these girls encountered doesn't mean that my kidnapping was any less. Kidnapping is kidnapping. It takes away your security, it takes away your freedom, and it makes you not trust people for the rest of your life. You know, kidnap survivors and kidnap victims, Joan, what we live with, you'll never know. The damage you've done cannot be repaired. You know, people like you, Joan, you're a scourge. It's what you are. You're a filthy scourge. And you have no character. The remark that you made and the behavior that you've shown and your inability to swallow your own fucking pride for once, just fucking once, to let it go and not be on the work. Everything's a work with you, Joan. You're always, you know, always. Hollywood knows it. The public knows it. Everyone that knows you knows you're always on the work, Joan. And you knew. You planned out this comment that you made. You know that you planned it out. Everybody knows their behavior, and then your refusal to apologize and hide behind your position in the public spotlight. I'm a comedian. I'm a comedian. You know, that is what a coward does, Joan. You're a coward. And I would think because you're a woman that you would understand what these girls went through. And especially because violent crimes committed against women are not funny. No one out here thinks they're funny, but you seem to be one of the few. And I can't help but wonder, Joan, if even though you're a woman, you might like misogyny. I mean, that's the only reason you would make the comment you made and then refuse to apologize, is that you yourself are, even though you're a woman, you're a misogynist. By all appearances, that's the way you make it look. And appearance in the public spotlight has to do with everything. It counts for everything, and you know it. You know it better than anybody else. Man, Joan. You caused a national outrage, and you're sitting there hiding from it. Not just behind your position as a comedian, but, I mean, you know, all the different ways that you have available to you because of your riches and your influence. You've said nothing. You've shown no remorse. That you have no remorse, and you can make all these excuses that you want to make. And I know there's more coming. I know. Now that I've called you out, you're either going to do one of two things. You're going to ignore it, and you're going to laugh, and you're going to think it's funny, ha ha, and who the hell am I, and this and that. Or you're going to respond with even more excuses for why you can't issue a simple apology and swallow your fucking pride. Kidnapping, Joan, is not a joke. It's not funny. The experience of kidnapping goes like this, Joan. You fear for your life. You don't know what that kidnapper is going to do. Kidnapping victims and kidnapping survivors live with PTSD for the entirety of their lives in one way or another. You know, their minds, oftentimes there will be triggers that bring them back to that moment in time when they were taken from their family and their friends and their place of security in the world, everything that they knew and loved. And they're homesick. Oh, the homesickness. That's another trauma. And this isn't just any homesickness, Joan. This isn't just any homesickness that happens. This is a fear that you'll never see your family again. You know, Joan, my kidnapper told me that my mother was dead and I would never see her again. My kidnapper took me over 5 state lines. For a month and a half, it took investigators and police to find me. A month and a half. I could have been dead by then. I'm lucky to be alive, and I realize my privilege and my luck. There are other kidnapping victims out here that didn't survive, Joan. What about them? What about their families? You didn't think about that, did you? You couldn't stop to think for 1 minute about kidnapped victims that died, that were killed. Awful, horrible things were done to them. Violent, sick, twisted things were done by these kidnappers to some of their victims. Some of these victims were tortured, Joan. Tortured. Do you understand the meaning of that word? And you think everybody's blowing it out of proportion. No one's blowing it out of proportion. We're telling you what it is to be kidnapped and to live in fear for your life until someone rescues you. You know, Joan, I remember when the police came to the door where I was being held with a search warrant. And let me tell you, I ran to that police officer and held on to that officer for my life. And I didn't look back. And the detectives that were there with those officers, I held on to them too. My first question is, are you taking me back to my mother? I want my mother. Where's my family? I want to see my family. Those were my first words, Joan. You know, I'm not on video for a reason. You don't deserve the privilege of seeing my face. You don't deserve the privilege of seeing the face behind the words. But I'll extend to you this. You want to see the face behind the words? You show up on national television and we'll talk. I'm challenging you right now to a debate over your words and your actions in regards to kidnapping victims and survivors. The can of worms you've opened, Joan, are not just any can of worms. You've really done it this time, and you're not going to get away with it. And when I say you're not going to get away with it, let me clarify what I mean. I am going to make sure that the public hounds you. I am going to make sure that this issue stays in the national spotlight, and that what you did, your words are going to live on as an example of why we can't ignore the crime of kidnapping, and why we can't ignore treatment for kidnapping survivors, and why we can't ignore supporting or deny support for the families of kidnapped victims that never made it. And it's your face that's going to be plastered on that cause. It's your face, Joan. You're forever going to be known as the person who outraged kidnapping survivors and the families of dead kidnapping victims for eternity. How's that feel, Joan? Because that's what I'm going to do. That's exactly what I'm doing. You want to stop that from happening? Tell you what, show up on national TV. I'll meet you on national television. You pick the show, you pick the time, you pick the place, you pick the venue. And I'll show up. Oh, and you know what? The 3 girls from Ohio that were kidnapped, they get to come with too. I want them there. If, you know, girls, if you want to be there, tell your attorney. Have your attorney do your work for you. You deserve to live a life of peace. If you don't want to show up and you don't want to see Joan's face and you don't want a part of this, I don't blame you. Because you deserve to have your time with your families and your privacy. I know how important that is, being a kidnapping survivor and having lost my security and my privacy and having had my personal space violated and having had my safety and my body violated. So because I know your feeling, I'll respect you if you don't want to be there. Because I understand. I know what it's like. But apparently Joan doesn't. So before I close, let me send my words of love and care and support to the 3 girls out in Ohio. You know who you are. And everybody else knows who you are, and you're not forgotten. You are not ever going to be forgotten. I'm one person who refuses to let your memory not be honored. Your memory deserves to be honored even though you're alive. You were lucky to make it. You were like me. But for those who didn't make it, those are the ones we got to stand up for. For those that are out there now that the police are looking for to rescue from their kidnappers, those are the other ones we got to worry about. Because Joan's not going to worry. Joan's with these crowd of people who don't care. And Joan, we know how cold-hearted you are. And I know you'll probably not respond to this. I'll be surprised if you do. Because, you know, responding to this, Joan, would mean that you would actually have to show courage and character. Because we know you have no intelligence. There's no doubt, as after all these years, some of the things you've done, some of the things you've said show you have no intelligence. You want to prove me wrong, prove me wrong. I'd be glad for you to prove me wrong. But I'm asking that you make amends for this. Joan, you owe it to the people you hurt. You hurt a whole class of people. You've hurt a whole class of people. And it's not funny. There's nothing comedic about it. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. Kidnapping is not fodder for your comedy. It's not fodder for your act. It's not fodder for you to use for publicity. Anyone who does that is sick and really needs help. And Joan, you know, you're up there in age, and I can't help but to wonder if your decision-making abilities are starting to go. So again, I'll issue my challenge. You want to see the face behind the voice, and you want this to go away, then make amends for it. by realizing the harm you've done and publicly coming forward on national television. And let's talk about this. Let's talk about why your decision was one of the most hurtful things you could do. That's all I've got to say. You'll find out who I am if your attorney wants to contact me. I'm not going to give my name here. You want to find out who I am, do the work. You think you're so smart, do the work. If the girls' attorneys want to know who I am, I'll disclose who I am to them. Because I'm on their side. And I support them, and I'm doing this for them, and I'm doing this for me, and I'm doing this for every kidnapped survivor out here, as well as every kidnapping that's ever happened where the victim didn't survive and the families are now left without their loved ones. Those are the people I'm doing it for. Someone, Joan, finally has to stand up to you, and I'm the one that's going to do it. I'm not afraid. You want to know who I am, do the work and find out. Contact me and I'll tell you who I am. That's what this YouTube channel is for. It's what email is for. Contact me on the YouTube channel. I'll give you my email address. Anyways, I know I said that I was done, so now I am done. I'm out of here. Think about it, Joan.